Yesterday there was sun and there was rain, beauty in the mundane. And as the light startled our eyes, we let go of disguise.
Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hannah Olson and I live in Minnesota with my husband and our 3 children, Sophie, Soren, and Svea. Sophie is 6, Soren is 4, and Svea is 11 months old, which is crazy to me. But we homeschool our kids. I'm an elementary teacher turned stay-at-home homeschooling mom, and I absolutely love this. This is my dream job. I'm so happy to do it, and it's not necessarily something that I saw myself doing when I was younger. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but I didn't necessarily always see myself being a homeschooling mom. So it has been quite the journey for us, so much fun, and I look forward to future years. Both my husband and I attended public school over the years, and then we met at a Christian college. So that's a little bit of our background story. I have so enjoyed teaching our own children, though as much as I loved teaching other children, there is something special about educating your own kids. I am so excited about today's video because we are talking about how to start homeschooling. This is something I get a lot of questions about, and I'm happy to answer your questions. I just thought, what if I had a video, a place where you could refer to and just get a lot of questions answered, or maybe some of your fears eased when it comes to starting homeschooling. This is going to be a series. Well, it's going to be at least 2 videos, maybe 3, but I think we can keep it to 2 videos, so definitely watch out for part 2 of how to start homeschooling. These tips are not categorized necessarily by curriculum or planning or environment, all those different ways that you can approach homeschooling, or philosophies too. So if you see me looking down, I'm just reading off of my list here on my lap. My first tip is to figure out your why for homeschooling. Figure out your reason, basically, behind wanting to homeschool. This is hugely important actually in parenting. I talk about it more in my course, The Present Mama Playbook, but when you know your why, it keeps you from straying, it keeps you on track, and it keeps you from caving. In parenting, especially in terms of following through with expectations. And I believe it is the same for homeschooling. There are days in homeschooling, and I know I'm starting off the video by saying there are hard days, but I think you probably expected that there would be hard days in homeschooling. It's not all going to be easy and smooth sailing. So if you know your why for wanting to homeschool, it will help you to stay on track and stay motivated and to just keep on keeping on, as some people say. The second thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to homeschooling are 2 main fears that I've heard people often have. Number 1 is that I can't teach, and number 2 is that my kids will be weird. So I have a couple things to refute or maybe dissipate those 2 main fears for you. The first one is that I can't teach. To address that first fear, that I can't teach my child, I wanted to first remind you that God does equip those who He calls to homeschool, and He does give wisdom to those who ask. We learn about that in the Bible. That is something you can absolutely pray for, is wisdom in doing the next right thing, the next right step. I'm not saying that you, by praying for wisdom, will automatically gain knowledge in every single subject, and sometimes you might need a mentor or an extra tutor situation, maybe get a little help from a teacher at a homeschool co-op, or your child could apprentice in some skill that you yourself do not have. But I want you to think back to the public school system, maybe, if you were educated that way. Think back to certain years when you had certain teachers who maybe they weren't passionate about the subject, or they were clearly not knowledgeable in that subject at all. Now, sometimes that can go downhill, and I'm not saying that that is good and that you don't need to teach your child certain subjects because they'll be fine. But for me, growing up, I definitely had teachers in the public school system who did not care at all whatsoever about subjects they were teaching, and I was forced to learn myself. What I'm trying to say is that you don't need to hold the public school system up high as the ideal of perfect education in every subject. Something else I've learned and have come to really respect about the homeschool culture that I have seen is that we are often teaching our kids how to learn. And once kids know how to learn and they're passionate about learning, they can further teach themselves. So it's not just about learning the knowledge, it's becoming a lifelong learner. It is important to teach our kids to have a love for learning, become a lifelong learner, and then once they gain that ability to help teach themselves, they can eagerly teach themselves more as they get older. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful about public schooling, but I am trying to point out the fact that not everything is 100% perfect there, of course, and that may be why you're choosing to homeschool. And you don't need to feel like you can't teach your child. You can pray for wisdom, you can, and I'll talk more about it later, but you can get a mentor or a friend to help you come alongside you in your homeschooling journey. And you can also teach your own children to love learning and to help teach themselves, especially as they get older. The second main concern or fear I hear from people who are either considering homeschooling or people who are on the outside of homeschooling and are looking at homeschoolers is they are concerned that homeschoolers will be weird. And first of all, what I want to say to that regarding socialization, excuse me, is that your kids will more likely be more well-versed, and I know this could be argued, but more well-versed in handling social situations and in interacting with adults and people of all ages than they would be if they were in the public school system. If you are in the public school system, you are typically in a classroom with children all of one age and a bunch of them. And your children as homeschoolers throughout the day will have a chance to interact in a variety of social situations. This is very different from being in a public school system where it is one exact age or, within the span of 1 year, all in one classroom together all day, every day. And in society, once we grow up, once we become adults, where again are we all one exact age in a room together? You need to have the skills of interacting with people of a wide variety of ages. My second reason why I'm not concerned about homeschoolers being weird, and I know this is kind of funny, is there are a lot of weird people in public school too. I was educated in public schools from kindergarten up through 12th grade, and I knew a lot of weird people. Also, I would consider myself to be weird. I think weird is a very subjective term, so weird people are everywhere. And I don't mean creepy weird, I just mean quirky. So if you're concerned about your kids being quirky or about homeschoolers being a little too out there, I would argue that there are out there people or weird people, and that term is so subjective, and also it's very negative overall when you think about homeschooling. So let's just not worry about people being weird or considered to be different, because God made everyone with unique skills and even unique ways of interacting and talking. And I love the fact that in homeschooling we get a chance to socialize with people from all sorts of parts of society and all ages throughout the day if we're running errands together outside of our school time too. Something else to remember though along those lines is that homeschooling is a lot more broad these days than it was even in the past decade or couple decades, meaning you can sign your kids up if you're concerned about maybe some aspects of socialization. You can sign them up for a homeschool co-op, for co-op sports, for other activities that aren't even related to homeschooling. And that's what we've done too. It didn't come out of a concern. We just like certain activities. My daughter is in Irish dance. That's not related to a homeschool co-op or anything homeschool related. And we love doing different Bible study groups, and we've done those over the years. There are many ways to help your children in this day and age to interact with others outside of your family if you choose to do so. If you are worried about your child missing out on certain social events like prom or dances, that's something you and your husband will have to discuss and figure out what you really want your family's approach to be. But I have heard of homeschool co-ops that have dances and get-togethers and kids going on group dates and even having prom. And there are, again, homeschool sports as well. So many different things you can look into. And the number of homeschoolers in this country, in America, are growing exponentially. It is so huge, especially after the pandemic. And so there are so many options out there for you. I just want to encourage you in that. Hopefully this dissipates some of those main fears or concerns we have when starting homeschooling. This next tip might not be a popular opinion, but I believe you do not need to research all of the educational philosophies and approaches before you begin homeschooling. Now that can be really fun for certain personalities, so more power to you if you decide you would like to research everything and really lay it all out and take notes and then decide which philosophy you want to adopt. But you do not have to adopt a certain philosophy in order to begin homeschooling or necessarily in order to continue homeschooling. You do not need to label yourself or choose a certain camp to stay in. It can be so overwhelming to see countless approaches out there and feel like you must label yourself immediately, or you must decide which one you're going to adopt for the rest of all of your homeschooling years, however long you want to homeschool, and you just don't have to jump into that right away. Of course, later on, you might want to do a little more research, especially as your children grow older, but I just wanted to tell you, you do not have to adopt a certain educational philosophy right out of the gates. And spoiler alert, you actually can change your mind later on too. So you don't have to feel like you must commit and stick to a certain educational philosophy forever. Along those lines, a more open and go curriculum is ideal, I think, for starting out. And open and go simply means it's like one bound course book for a subject, so like a language arts book or a math book, and you are not picking and choosing all sorts of other resources and books from different companies. You're just picking one. And open and go also means you can open to the certain page for that lesson for that day, pick up where you left off yesterday, and it's all laid out there for you. So you, in the evenings every night, don't have to do a whole bunch of prep work and teach yourself and figure out how you're going to present it to your kids. And you definitely can do that kind of prep if you want, and a lot of times it is valuable. But open and go is so useful when it's all laid out there for you. Oftentimes there's even a little script for parents in an open and go curriculum. I've learned over time that I have a more eclectic approach, I guess, but I'm not super labeling myself right now, to homeschooling, meaning I like to collect and gather different manipulatives and resources and activities and books, course books from different companies. And that's just maybe because of my background as an elementary teacher. I find it very fascinating and fun, and I don't like committing to only one certain homeschooling curriculum company, but I know that it can get really overwhelming, and so I would recommend an open and go curriculum if you're just starting out. And if you have just a little bit of extra bandwidth, I would also recommend combining your open and go curriculum with a morning basket routine. I have a video about our morning basket routine in fall 2023, and I will link that video down below for you. Not a lot has changed in the subsequent months after that video, so our morning basket routine looks much the same. Basically, a morning basket routine means you are putting poetry, maybe Bible verse memory, music appreciation, art appreciation, and some calendar time all together in a little basket. And it's something you just sit down to start your school day with, and you can all discuss multiple subjects together. It's a sweet little bonding time for you as a family, and then you jump into your actual, book work or your open and go curriculum time. So definitely start out with that if all the options are feeling overwhelming. There is a site I've really enjoyed over the years called Kathy Duffy. It's Homeschool Reviews. And yes, sometimes it can be a little bit more subjective because it is her evaluation, or that site's evaluation, about if a certain curriculum is truly effective sometimes. But I have found overall it's quite objective, and she is so well organized on the site. It provides a very detailed review of countless homeschool resources and curriculums. So I will link Kathy Duffy, that site, down below for you, because it really can help you if you're curious about what kinds of materials or what kinds of approaches different curriculums have. Another thing to remember is that homeschooling, while it can cost a lot, it can also cost very little. It is up to you about how much money you want to spend on homeschooling. There are so many free resources available out there. I have really enjoyed two main sites. Even when I was a Title I teacher, for part of my teaching career, I taught Title I, which was small group reading and math interventions. I loved the sites This Reading Mama and The Measured Mom. And if you sign up for their email lists, they have a lot of free stuff, but you get even more as email subscribers, I believe. And you can download all kinds of things that are so effective for teaching many different skills. I will link The Measured Mom and This Reading Mama down below for you, but you can definitely find things online that are free or that are very inexpensive. Teachers Pay Teachers is another wonderful site that you can make a free account on, and you can filter search results by free or even less than $5, and by skill and grade level. So there are countless things you can find out there. My favorite person on Teachers Pay Teachers is probably JDA or JD Alvarez, and we have a couple of her other workbooks that I've gotten later on. She has an awesome logic activity pack, and I found her stuff is very intentional. If you're curious to see what we use for homeschooling in our family, I have videos up about our curriculum picks from fall 2023. So for kindergarten for Sophie, and for Soren's second year of preschool, which has been this year as well. And that has a whole list of all sorts of resources and fun things that you can look at. But again, you do not need to start with everything, and it does not need to cost a lot. A lot of the things we have collected over the past many years, and even when I was like pregnant with our first. And I just want to remind you, you can start simple and add in extra little pieces and games and manipulatives or an extra course book later on. Another thing to remember is that it is the little bits of daily or nearly daily consistency that make a huge difference. I've discovered this over time, and it's honestly surprised me. I know it shouldn't surprise you that little baby steps add up over time, but it is so important just to stay consistent even in the little things. I hope it's encouraging to you to know that even doing small tasks together, working on letters and letter sounds every single day, it adds up over time and it makes a big difference. You will be so surprised, pleasantly surprised at how much you grow, and especially your kids grow in their knowledge and their love for learning if you do little baby steps every single day. My next tip is to look into something. It's a site called HSLDA, hslda.org. It's the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and you can see a map of the United States. Click on your state, and then it shows you the legal requirements for homeschooling in your state. And the states are kind of also categorized by who has stricter requirements and who has less strict requirements. And this really helps you because there is a certain measure of accountability that you will need to do, especially when your kids reach a certain age in different states. And you can also sign up for a membership at HSLDA. I do not currently have a membership. My children are still young and I'm still considering it, but I love the idea that they have a whole team of lawyers who help you work through any concerns or questions you have, especially if you're a member. That's some of the benefits you can get. It's also a great site to look into if you are just starting out and you really want to make sure that you're on a good trajectory. And also if your child is older when you're starting homeschooling, when your child is maybe older than age 7, then you really want to make sure you are being proactive and disciplined, and you're going to be held accountable for some of your children's education, which I think that's a whole philosophy too, but I think it's sometimes the accountability really benefits us and it helps us to stay on track and productive and proactive. So looking into HSLDA can be extra helpful. My next tip is that you do not need a homeschool room. You don't need a dedicated room in your house that is for homeschool specifically. We do a lot of school at the kitchen table and even on the couch, especially towards the end of my pregnancy with our third born. I was on the couch a lot just for especially the homeschool morning, and I love how actually that infuses education into your everyday life. Like you can have a child reading out loud to you standing in the kitchen while you're chopping veggies, or you can be just doing daily life together. I'm not saying this is all throughout the day, but you do want to have this philosophy that education and learning isn't just set aside for one room of the house. It's a lifestyle. And I hope this is encouraging to you also because you do not need to spend money in setting up a whole beautiful schoolroom. Of course, many of us dream of a gorgeous schoolroom with desks or a couch for reading and stuff like that. But again, homeschooling does not need to cost a lot, and not many of us have just a spare room to use for homeschooling in our house. I know what comes to mind for me is I've seen in the past someone on YouTube who was so excited to do kind of homeschooling during the pandemic, and she spent so much money setting up an impeccably decorated homeschool room. And I don't know how much they truly used it. That's not for me to really worry about, but I felt most of all that this kind of a homeschool room, a video about that, is so discouraging for those of us moms who have maybe a smaller house, or right now I'm at our apartment. That's a whole other thing. We live at an apartment and a house, and so we've had to be flexible with that. And we don't have giant homes sometimes and giant budgets, or we just don't want to spend the money on setting up an entire home homeschool room. So I want to encourage you that way. You do not need a homeschool room. You need basically a kitchen table or a nice spot on your living room floor or a couch or a chair where your kids can sit on your lap if they're younger and read together. So there are countless ways to homeschool. You can even homeschool in the car a lot of the time. And I just want to encourage you that way because you do not need to set up the most beautiful Pinterest-worthy homeschool room. And I would argue that it might even be more beneficial not to have a homeschool room because, again, it shows your children that education is just part of our everyday life and it's our overall family culture. That's it for today's video. That's it for part 1 of how to start homeschooling. I plan on making a second video for sure, possibly a third video, but like I said, I think we can keep it to 2 videos for this little mini series. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you know when a new video comes up on my channel. I would love it if you would choose to stick around too. We love talking about all things motherhood, homemaking, and homeschooling, of course. You can also sign up for my email list. I love sending out emails to my email subscribers that not only have what's new on the blog and new on YouTube and any little life updates, but I also share a tried and true recipe recommendation or meal idea, which I personally love getting meal ideas. So hopefully that is helpful to you as well if you sign up for my email list. I have a little bit of exciting news. If you've been around here for a while, then you've probably heard about my online motherhood and homemaking course called the Present Mama Playbook. Well, actually, I have been working so hard behind the scenes on revamping it and refreshing it, but this also includes offering you a free masterclass. I'm offering you a masterclass full of productivity secrets for moms. Even if you don't have any outside childcare, this is the free masterclass for you. In it, I'm sharing 4 main secrets about managing your time wisely so that you can be more present with your children. These are some of my very favorite hacks that I'm sharing with you in the masterclass. So you can check out the free masterclass down below, and I hope to see you there. I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you're at. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.
Yesterday there was sun.